What was it like for you to get a first-hand look at our border here in El Paso, along with the Defense Secretary Hegseth?
Look, I've been in the El Paso border many times throughout my career, but yesterday was something I've never seen before in my career. Seeing the amount of military on the border standing shoulder to shoulder with Border Patrol being a force multiplier, I think it was amazing. And I can tell you, El Paso sectors, we're locked down here. And the men and women of the Border Patrol have been overwhelmed for 4 years. Having the military on the border with them gives them some relief, but also secures the border at the highest level I've seen in a long time.
And as you know, Governor Greg Abbott here in Texas has utilized the Texas National Guard to go along the border. How does it differ here in El Paso, particularly the Texas area, compared to other states? Because I'm assuming that, you know, other border states like Texas, like New Mexico, Arizona, California, they don't necessarily have the National Guard commitment like they do with Governor Abbott here in Texas. How much is that a game changer? And from what you saw, how impressed or unimpressed, or what was your vision when you first saw some of the National Guardsmen at our border here, with Juarez right across the border and us here in El Paso?
Well, the Border Patrol's taking a harder stance in all the southwest border states, you know, California, New Mexico, and Arizona, but let's be frank, those three states don't have a governor that believes in secure borders. So Governor Abbott, I've said it many times, in the last 4 years, he's done more to secure the Texas border than anybody in the Biden administration. He had illegal immigration in Texas down over 70% because of the actions he's taken. And now it's being complemented, right? He got his National Guardmen on the border. We have now the military on the border to complement that. Plus you have the Border Patrol. The Texas border right now is very secure because of the actions of Governor Abbott and Pete Hegseth and the United States Border Patrol. It's a partnership that I've never seen at this level, and Texans can feel more safe because of what they've done on the border.
And I know you mentioned that partnership yesterday when you were having your press conference at the border, and you talked about how amazing it is for you because you've never seen the type of cooperation with the U.S. military, along with other federal agencies like the FBI, the DEA, a lot of the other ones that you had mentioned. Talk about that.
Well, look, we started interior enforcement operations day one. We're just shy of, I think we're over 9,000 interior arrests, a vast majority of them public safety threats, as President Trump committed. But I was in Chicago when we started this operation, and again, a game-changing moment when I stood there and saw the FBI, U.S. Marshals, DEA, you know, in ATF, and, you know, all DOJ is all in. The Deputy Attorney General was there. So it was great to see law enforcement working with law enforcement, especially because you're concentrating on public safety threats. And in Chicago, what was great about Chicago, when we found the illegal alien with drugs, DEA could do a prosecution before we deport them, right? Put them in prison. And we found Tren Agua people with guns. So the ATF can prosecute those gun cases, put them in prison before we deport them. So it was all a government. It sends a strong message that President Trump is serious when he says he wants to remove the illegal alien public safety threat from this country and make this country safe.
And Mr. Homan, when the Trump administration announced that ICE would and could go into schools and into churches, some local leaders here in the El Paso area spoke out, and that included the bishop of the El Paso diocese, and he said, quote, "Mass deportations can never be reconciled with Christian principles or basic human decency," end quote. How do you feel when you hear comments like this, particularly from somebody like a priest or in this case, the bishop?
Well, look, as a lifelong Catholic, he's got problems in the Catholic Church he should be concentrating on, not our immigration enforcement. That's my personal opinion. But look, everybody's mismessaging what we did, the sensitive location policy. ICE was the only federal law enforcement agency that had those policies. FBI walks in college campuses every day to arrest people, so does DEA. So look, what it basically says is, if we have a significant public safety threat or national security threat, for instance, MS-13 member, senior in high school, and we know he's selling drugs, we know he's strong-arming other children at school, we're going to go and arrest him. Doesn't mean we're doing a sweep of the high school. We're not doing sweeps. We're not doing sweeps at elementary school. We're not going to walk into church and do a large enforcement operation. But when we have a public safety threat or national security threat, there's no safe harbor. There's no sanctuary for them. So we're going to go. We got to go. But the left is pushing this message out. We're going to raid churches. We're going to raid schools. It's simply not true. When let's say we have to go arrest an MS-13 member in a high school because he's a significant public safety threat, we'll certainly work with the local police department. We'll certainly work with the school. It's not going to be some massive operation. It's ridiculous how they're talking about this policy now. I've never heard them talk about local police going and arresting somebody in a school. I've never heard them talk about going to school and arresting a public safety threat, or someone that's charged with rape or robbery. No other law enforcement agency takes that hate. Right? And look, ICE is no different. The president has made it clear we're going to concentrate on public safety threats no matter where they are.
Also, we have elected officials here in El Paso, and that includes the El Paso mayor, the county judge, who have said that they're not necessarily going to concentrate on enforcing immigration policies. What do you say to some of those local leaders in border cities that are saying similar stuff?
Well, look, I find it amazing that any elected mayor, elected city councilman, or governor does not want public safety threats removed from their community. That's their number one responsibility, is protection of the constituents. So why not work with us and help us remove public safety threats from your community? Isn't that their job? And look, even New York City Mayor Eric Adams, I sat down with him. He doesn't want to be an immigration officer. I don't want him to be an immigration officer. I want his cops to work with our cops, right? So he's all in. He understands that public safety threats in New York City is a problem. He wants to work with us to remove public safety threats that are here illegally from his community. He's willing to help find over the 300,000 children that the Biden administration released in this country they can't find. He's willing to help identify national security threats. That's a sanctuary city, but he clearly understands the difference between a sanctuary and protecting public safety. I wish more politicians would just listen to what we're doing. Look at the numbers, for God's sake. I just said we got 9,000 criminal arrests, vast majority criminals. That is why we're being transparent. That's why we're trying to control the messaging. We're showing the American people we're doing exactly what we said we're going to do. I wish the politicians would stop playing politics and take public safety a little more serious.
Gotcha. And then also, obviously the big news of yesterday was the agreement, at least the temporary agreement for tariffs when it comes to Mexico and Canada. Now that President Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico has agreed to send 10,000 National Guard men from the El Paso, or from the Mexico area, to our border here in Ciudad Juarez and all up and down this entire southern border. How much of a game changer is that?
Huge, huge.
And describe that. I mean, they already had a lot of guardsmen at the border. They already had military at the border. How much more is that really going to help?
It's going to be significant. Under Trump's first administration, we had Mexican military in the southern and northern border. First president that demanded that, and it was a great help to move those numbers to historic lows. Having it on the border now is going to help us in several ways. Number one, it's going to reduce the amount of fentanyl being trafficked in this country. It's going to reduce the amount of women and children being sex trafficked. It's going to reduce the amount of no-inspected terrorists or people on terrorist watch lists coming across the border. Most importantly, the cartels are making threats against the men and women of the Border Patrol. Having our Border Patrol on the border, being vigilant, having the U.S. military on the border, being vigilant, and having Mexican soldiers on the border, I think it's going to thwart any attempts of the cartels to take action against our agents. But, a word of warning to the cartels, I wouldn't cross that line. You harm a Border Patrol agent, you harm a soldier, President Trump will not hesitate to rain hell down those cartels. He'll wipe them off the face of the earth. So I wouldn't test him. I wouldn't test this president, because we got a strong president.
And on the other end of those tariffs, the agreement also that President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to with President Trump was for the United States to police southbound arms, guns, assault rifles from going into Mexico. What's the plan for that? I know that, as somebody that crosses the border pretty regularly, sometimes they do have southbound checks already with Customs and Border Protection. Will those be vamped up a little bit, or what's the process with that part of the agreement on the U.S. side? As
you said, we do the southbound operations all the time. We're just going to increase the frequency of that and the frequency of how many port of entries we do it at. Something we've done for a long time, we're going to increase them. Look, we should have a great partnership with Mexico, and we're going to do everything we can to have a great partnership, which means there's give and take. So we're going, the president's going to work very well with the president of Mexico. We're going to secure that border, and by securing that border, running south and northbound operations, we're going to save lives, not just American lives, migrant lives, and the citizens of Mexico. Think for a moment what if President Trump was able which his goal is take these cartels on. He already designated terrorist organizations. Imagine the country of Mexico without the criminal cartels in power as much as they are down there. They've killed thousands of journalists. They've killed thousands of law enforcement officers and politicians throughout the decades. Mexico would be such a much safer country if it wasn't for criminal cartels, and President Trump wants to help get them there.
Good. And one last question. I know as the border czar, you've talked about the different phases that right now you're going after some of the most violent criminals and everything. That's what you guys have been saying. After that phase, what next? What next? And then also, should people, particularly in a border community like ours here in the El Paso and Las Cruces area, should they be worried about making sure, since we do have checkpoints here and there up and down Interstate 10 and in other areas, should people be more cognizant of carrying papers, birth certificates, passports, you name it? I mean, should people worry about that? Will there be, in the next phases, will there be more Border Patrol type stops and such like that?
I wouldn't worry about that to an extent. I mean, look, if you have a green card or something, you're required to carry it with you, first of all, right? But look, again, we're not doing area control, which means we're not going to a large place and say, okay, everybody show me your IDs. That's not the way we work. Everybody ICE arrests is a targeted enforcement operation. They actually do what they call a fugitive operation sheet. They know exactly who they're looking for, pretty much where they're going to find them, and other issues, other children in the house, because they do a lot of investigation before they go arrest somebody. So look, right now we're concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats, but I've said from day one, if you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. What's the next issue? Next issue, look, we got 1.4 million, I think at last count, 1.4 million people who had due process at great taxpayer expense, were ordered removed by a federal judge, and became a fugitive. We'll be looking for those folks. And look, I'll say it again, if you're in the country illegally and you haven't been ordered removed by a federal judge, if you haven't been formally deported, you should leave on your own. Because if we have to go through the whole process and have you formally ordered removed by a judge, that puts certain bars on you, anywhere from 5 years to 20-year bar from coming back under any legal program. So let's say you have a U.S. citizen child here that may petition for you. If we have to deport you, there's bars placed where you can't come back. If you want to come back on a visitor visa, a tourist visa, there's certain bars put in place for you. So if you're here illegally, have been already deported, leave on your own, and don't put yourself in a position of being deported, formally deported, and have these bars placed against you. It's not okay to be in this country illegally. And I know a lot of people say it's a racist comment. It simply isn't. It's illegal. It's a crime to enter our country illegally. It's not okay to enter this country illegally. It's not okay to be here illegally. Just like it's not okay for me to be in some other country illegally. Again, Congress needs to fix the system. But illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. When people say, well, the last 4 years, they're just innocent illegal aliens coming across for a better life. And I get that, I understand that. But when you overwhelm the Border Patrol, where most agents have pulled off their national security duty, when up to 70% of agents have pulled off the line to make sandwiches and take care of families and do hospital transports and airport transports, when you overwhelm the Border Patrol and they pulled those agents off the line to do that humanitarian issue, that's when the drugs came across to kill 250,000 Americans. That's when people on terrorist watch lists crossed. That's when the sex trafficking of women and children increased 600%. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. We're going to enforce the law, and we're going to do it without apology.
Is there a timeline, though, for the next phase? I mean, I know this phase is probably pretty extensive, getting the violent criminals and everything, but with the second phase that'll target others that have maybe overextended their visas and stuff like that, when will that be implemented, or is that just something that you'll look to in the future?
It's a moving target. I have no timeline. We'll see how the operation goes the more and more criminals we arrest. And also, the more and more sanctuary cities fight against us, we want to open that aperture up. So, no timeline. We'll play it day by day, depending on what targets we have for that day. Now, targeting lists come out on a weekly basis. We'll see what we have, and we'll make operational changes based on what the targeting situation looks like.
Well, I appreciate your time being here, Mr. Homan. We're very appreciative of you being here. The Border Czar of the United States of America. Thank you very much. We appreciate your services, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Thank you.